Alright guys, so today we are reviewing the Nifty City digital cluster and the V2 Tesla screen. So there have been a couple of videos out already, and they're really good videos, but what I want to do is really focus on some of the things that maybe they didn't go over, questions that I've seen on Facebook and things like that, and some things that were outright wrong. Nothing against them doing the videos, but this being new, there's a lot of features and a lot of combinations that, we're testing out and they may not fully understand what it's capable of. So what I want to do is go over all of those things. There's a lot of possibilities with this, and I want to show you all of that. I'm not going to go over install because, again, a lot of videos have done that. It's very straightforward, but we're going to do a real in-depth look at what capabilities this setup gives you, both with just a cluster, with a V1 unit or without, whatever, and with the V2. So let's get into it. All right, so first, let's go over some of the basic features of this cluster. So you have 5 different themes that you can cycle through. Now, there's been a little bit of confusion on what exactly they are, but if you want to get technical, go ahead and say. So the first 3 are actually the 3 variations that are on the new Z. Your first one is the one that everybody knows with the Z logo on the center. Really nice looking unit. The second one is one of the other ones. There's 2 other ones that the new Z has, like enhanced and performance or something. I'm not sure of the details. However, that's what they are. The second one is really nice. It has the 2 gauges on either side, and then the information's in the center versus off to the side like the other one. And then the third one's basically the same. It just pulls everything further out to the side. The fourth one, I'm not sure. It's fully digital, no fake gauges. It's fake analog gauges. It's just fully digital with numbers. And then the fifth one is the one that most people like, and I'm also partial to, is the GTR style. Now, they all have their benefits, both in looks and, functionality. Obviously the ones that have the gauges to the side have a little bit more of the center section, which is great for some of the features we're going to go over. But again, it's all going down to preference. There's 5 out of the box. I say this because we're going to go over some really cool things here later on in the video. But out of the box, 5 themes. And they all have pretty much the same information. Some of it's laid out differently. Now, some of them do have a little bit more information than others, as far as the amount of gauges specifically that are available to you. Like, for example, the first one, that's the new Z, it has a little bit more information like water temp, oil temp, all of that just kind of there. But also all of that's available if you, go through the settings and pull up, the side menu. Now, the side menu is where it gets really interesting, because it has some presets in there, as far as information and different features like your G-force and all of that stuff. But that's also where, 1, Apple CarPlay, if you pair it directly to this, lives. 2, the HDMI input that the V2 unit uses is also there. And a lot of the newer features and functionality that isn't in the stock cluster, but the sensors were there, is there as well. Let me touch on a couple of those real quick. So the TPMS, the stock cluster just gives you an idiot light. It doesn't tell you individual tire pressures or anything. It's nice to have. However, it's nicer to see the individual tire pressures. This now adds that. Additionally, things like the doors opening and the hatch and everything, it actually will tell you individually what that is, just not that there's a warning that there's, a door open somewhere. Little things that aren't super important, but nice quality of life improvements. And so that's pretty much the basics. You got themes, you got some new information, but let's get into some of those deeper features that you're really wanting to know about. Let's start with just the cluster, with the V1 unit or no unit at all, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of what happens when you add a V2. And at the end, I'm going to tell you if I think it's worth it getting a V2, because the answer may surprise you. And also, I'm going to go over some little tricks as to why that answer may be different than what you think. All right, so let's talk about what the cluster doesn't do without the V2. So with the V2, the main thing is that it has the HDMI connected to the cluster, which means you can, one, mirror the screen to your cluster in that section, or with certain apps, and I'm going to get back to this in a minute, that are supported, you can actually port just that app to the cluster and it formats it in a little better format. I say that because we'll get into a little bit deeper, but it's a little hit or miss how it formats depending on which theme you're using and what the app is doing. So without that, basically what you're left with is the cluster in its stock form, which is great. I'm going to tell you right now, I really like this. And then anything else that you want to do other than those things is limited to CarPlay. They don't support Android Auto right now as far as what's built in, but you do get wireless CarPlay, which, in my opinion, is probably the key feature that people are going to get this for. Now, I've seen online, and I personally was trying to figure out what the best use case for this and how to make it work. And seen a lot of people asking questions on, if you're doing that, there's no audio output from the cluster. So, yeah, works great for maps, various other, like if you have the Escort radar detectors and their app, which also has map and navigation, mostly navigation, but there are a couple of other use cases that can work with this, but it's not going to output audio. So I think that the key that they're trying to push Nifty City for the V2 is that, you can have your CarPlay or whatever playing your music and whatever, and then you can port whatever app you want to the cluster using the HDMI, whether that's also some other built-in navigation app or Ecotech or things like that. So that is great, and there's a lot of good use cases for that. But my main thing was, I want Apple CarPlay with the navigation. That's what I use. I'm not adding a SIM card to this. I've got hotspot and stuff if I really need to connect it, but you can't use your hotspot at the same time while using CarPlay. So a lot of those mixed use cases don't really translate well or can't be done. The biggest thing that I've seen is, like I said, CarPlay being on the cluster, but how are you supposed to get your music from, for example, CarPlay? There's a couple different ways. Obviously, you can have a third-party app. Again, you're going to have the SIM card to do that, or some other source. Or there's a workaround that I haven't seen anybody talk about. And this, to me, is what really influences my final decision that I'm going to go over at the end of the video. But you can connect the cluster to CarPlay from your phone and have audio. It's very simple, really. All you have to do is basically you connect the cluster to CarPlay on your phone, and you're going to connect to the Tesla screen via Bluetooth. The phone can support Bluetooth to multiple things. It can only output one CarPlay, but it can do multiple Bluetooth. The Tesla screen has Bluetooth audio for music. If you see where I'm going with this, basically you're going to have CarPlay on the cluster, but the music that CarPlay is playing is still outputting from your phone via Bluetooth to the Bluetooth audio app on the Tesla screen. Now, there's a couple caveats to this, but also some perks. So I'll start with the perks. The navigation audio and things like that interrupt your music for the turn-by-turn navigation and things like that, and alerts will still work because that audio is still being piped out from your phone via whatever audio source it's using, in this case, Bluetooth music. The downside of this is you can't use messages or Siri or things like that, which is a big pull for CarPlay for a lot of people, myself included, for safety. I'll do text messages through voice all the time, and use Siri to play whatever playlist I want or whatever. The reason for this is that obviously CarPlay is running through the cluster. The cluster doesn't have any sort of audio input. It doesn't have the microphone. The Tesla screen has the microphone. So that's one downside of it. However, if you're just using it for navigation on a long road trip and you want your music and all of that, that's the solution right there. Now, that being said, what are the benefits of the V2? So, like I said, you can port anything from the Tesla screen to the cluster. It's a little bit better format for some things. However, there are some caveats with that too that are not explained. So let me get the biggest one out of the way, why I was touching on the V1 or no Tesla screen with the cluster using CarPlay and having audio out, because that was my biggest use case. I was hoping that with the V2 that you can port over CarPlay, individual parts of CarPlay to the cluster, and still have your music playing, but also have maps or something on the cluster. One, that doesn't work. That's actually more like what Apple has announced with CarPlay Ultra in the Aston Martins and things. It may be coming if this cluster supports CarPlay Ultra, where it can have multiple screens doing multiple things. Unfortunately, that is not how this works now. The other thing is that CarPlay isn't even supported to be ported over to the cluster. You can mirror the screen directly from the Tesla screen. You can mirror anything from the Tesla screen to the cluster. However, it is stuck in that landscape format, which is not ideal. It's very small. It definitely doesn't look as good as the built-in CarPlay if you're using it for maps and navigation. So that was one big downfall for me. So, that being said, what are the benefits of the V2? Well, glad you asked, because there's some really cool things that we can do with this, depending on what kind of setup you have and some third-party things. So, this is where things get interesting. Let's dig into that. So, with the V2 unit and the HDMI output to the cluster, with the right third-party setup, you can do some pretty cool things. So I personally have the Autometer Bluetooth dongle that allows me to set up gauges and check on different things. It's basically what I did before having a digital cluster. I had it on the split screen of the Tesla screen. This use case is also for those people that have Ecotech. Because again, yes, you are limited to 5 themes and the information on those 5 themes. However, get yourself a dongle that connects to Bluetooth um, to the Tesla screen, port it over, and now you have pretty much unlimited gauges and setups, depending on what you use. Now, the Autometer actually has various different themes. I can size up my gauges however I want to, pick the different types of gauges, different gauge faces. I can have them laid out. On its own, it's pretty cool in, one of the little sections, but as has been discussed in the other videos, if you press and hold the OK button, and this works same with for the CarPlay that's built in that I was talking about earlier, but on the HDMI as well, if you press and hold that button, it expands it even further into the center of the cluster. So if you have, like I do with the Autometer screen, and I have custom gauges set up, that's a completely different full theme with whatever gauges that I want. So really cool features there. Now, let's go over my final thoughts. All right, so final thoughts on this setup. I'm going to go ahead and say I love the cluster. There are some negatives that I will touch on now, and some other videos have. As far as the accuracy of the various things, it's pretty spot on, but there are a couple that I'm questioning. Just like Eric, I believe, Eric Benson did in his video, he was talking about the fuel gauge. I'm not sure how spot on that is. Again, with the Autometer stuff, I have a way to compare what they're reading versus what it's reading as far as speed and, other things. The fuel is a little off both ways. It's rated a little bit higher, a little bit lower, sometimes a pretty good bit different. However, I think that is just based on it's got to learn. The internal computer has to learn, and it being brand new and, not having a lot of drive cycles to learn from, it's trying to guess. It seems to be getting better as I've driven it for a few days. So I'm on the fence on that. Speed is pretty accurate. It is usually between about 1 mile per hour from what my other stuff is reading. It has some GPS things like my radar detector, and then the Autometer stuff as well. And it's within 1. Same with the oil temp, coolant temp, all of that stuff is pretty spot on. Everything is pretty close. One thing of note, and I know Ray mentioned this in his video, and it's kind of a big one, depending, is the RPMs. So he mentioned that it was off by about 150. I don't think that it's specifically off. I think that there is a software delay currently that it can't keep up with certain things. I say this because I feel like it is probably more pronounced in a vehicle with a lightweight flywheel like myself. I also say this because I was testing, because I thought I detected a little bit of lag. I was using the GTR theme the first day that I got it, and I went and launched it. I was watching it. Usually I don't watch the cluster because, again, I know my car. I kind of pretty much know when to shift, but I was trying to detect if there was any noticeable lag, and I actually hit rev limiter. Then then I had a catastrophic failure. Luckily, not my motor. I have another video on what happened there. But basically, the shock from hitting rev limiter, the tone ring on my flywheel decided to go bye-bye, banging around, completely demolished my crank angle sensor and snapped it off the mount. And then, of course, as I drove home in limp mode, when I went to cold start it, the pieces of the tone ring jammed up in the teeth, locked it up. I've got a new clutch kit in there already. It's good to go. Luckily, there was no major damage. However, again, it's something to think about. I don't think it's a deal breaker. I mean, obviously, if you're racing and stuff, you should know your car. Secondly, you just kind of can learn that maybe it doesn't keep up with your flywheel, or maybe there's a little bit of a software delay and you just shift a little bit earlier than what it says. It's just something to note. Also, there are a couple of other things for the cluster that, you know, may bug some people. Again, this has been talked about in the other ones. So if you are a base model and you don't have rev match and everything, and you're a manual, it will not show the individual gears as you shift into them. This is a problem. Not really for that, because that's a feature, it's whatever. I mean, it's nice to have, but by default, the cluster reads it as an automatic. So it's stuck saying P instead of the gear that you're in. Myself and a couple of the other guys have gone over this in their videos and have talked to Nifty City. They're working on an update to at least change that to the letter M. I've not gotten the update yet, but if that's something that will bother you before getting the update, just know that's a thing. It's not a deal breaker. It's just kind of annoying if you're nitpicky about that kind of stuff. I personally am, but at the same time, I can deal with it for now. They've promised an update. Hopefully the other issues with the gauge for the fuel, maybe not reading right, or the RPM delay, that should be fixed in an update as well. I've been giving them a lot of information, so they're working on that. Speaking of negatives and updates and all of that stuff, let's talk about the V2. So also, pretty good. But the negatives that I'm going to touch on first is I've had a little bit of issues out of it. The main thing for me is that, and it may be just my unit, I'm working with the engineers. They only want to talk over WhatsApp. It is what it is. But out of the box, the sub output didn't work. If you don't have a sub, it's not a problem. Like I said, it may just be my unit, but everything's plugged in correctly. I've actually done audio for decades, professionally, before my recent career change. And so, you know, I've tested everything. You know, I've got a tester, the RCA from the back, directly from the back of the radio, to my amp, is outputting, my amp's turning on. I don't know if there is a setting in there that I'm not finding, and I've gone through everything and things that they've suggested, or what, to turn that sub output on, but it's not on. The outputs on the same harness for the front speakers do output, so I can actually plug my RCAs into that. It at least gets the sub working, but I can't fiddle around with any of the settings for, you know, actual gain for the sub itself, and, you know, low pass filters, high pass filters, all that stuff. It isn't optimal. All of that said, let's go on some positives. So with the V2 unit, other than that, the sound is definitely light years better than the V1. The EQ is much better. There's a lot more adjustability in it. It has a lot more functions. It's got some DSP stuff in there. Really great. you know, it's a good unit. But let's get to the final thoughts. Do I think, one, the cluster is worth it? And two, do I think that it is worth getting the V2 with the cluster? Start with the cluster. I think absolutely this is completely worth it. It is a game changer. There's a lot of guys that, you know, will specifically, you know, hate on it. They're old school. They love the analog cluster. I'm a little bit that way too with a lot of things. I mean, I have my 300 here for that old school feel. I don't consider the 370 to be like any sort of classic anything. It's a little dated, to be honest, and I want to update it to some newer functionality, newer features that the newer Z has, and gain some things while I'm at it. This is a daily driver. I want the best experience as I'm driving as I can. I don't particularly care about looks. Digital cluster, I think, looks good, but I don't particularly have any need to just stick to the old analog gauges just because they're analog gauges. Like, that's not a thing for me. The amount of information that I get now with this digital cluster, the customization of it, the other things that it opens up with third-party things and dongles and all of that stuff, and CarPlay for, you know, having navigation in the screen for long trips, stuff like that, absolutely worth it. Do I think the V2 is worth it? So this is where my answer, it's kind of in the middle. It depends. If you have some third-party dongle or Ecotech specifically, and that's something that you are really interested in running in your cluster, absolutely get it, because it can do that, and it is great at it. As far as literally anything other than that, I don't think it's worth it. If you've already got a V1 in your car and you just want to add this cluster, I think the better use case, if you even use CarPlay, is to get the cluster, pair your CarPlay to the cluster, do Bluetooth audio for the audio for it, and be done. Like, you can't port CarPlay over through the HDMI, which is the feature that I thought it had, that the V2 offers. The ability to port other apps to the cluster other than like Ecotech or something that's gauge related, I don't really see the benefit of, other than it being cool to show off for like 2 minutes. Like, oh, you can have YouTube illegally playing, or, you know, Hulu or whatever video app you have, you know, to the cluster. Cool, you can do that, but you're not really going to be doing that a lot. And there's not really any reason other than, you know, navigation. Which again, if you are using CarPlay for navigation, you can't do that. So if you don't have a screen and you want a screen, cool, get the V2. If you have Ecotech, cool, get the V2. If you've already got a V1, I wouldn't bother. Just stick with the cluster. Either way, both units are really good, and they offer a lot to you for the money. They are a little bit pricey, but again, a lot of cool stuff you can do with these. I've enjoyed my Tesla screen that I've had for a year or two now. So I definitely recommend having one of those anyway, just for the big screen and the capabilities. But the cluster is a really good add-on for this. So definitely recommend it. The V2 unit is also good. Check them out at Nifty City. I appreciate Nifty City for sending these to me. You know, it was really nice of them to allow me to review these for you guys. And if you have any questions, leave a comment. You know, I'll get to them. I'll try to answer everything I can. And keep an eye out for the follow-up video of the disaster that I talked about earlier with the flywheel, because I've got a little bit of content for that coming as well. So give me a like, subscribe if you like it, and go check out Nifty City for these. And hope to see everybody else getting these, because they're super awesome. Thanks.